Well, world wars change worlds. And if you have a global agenda, then global problems allow you to offer global solutions. And if you look how the world was transformed by the First World War and the Second World War, the world was a completely different place after both of those wars. And the idea all along has been to have a third world war to complete the transformation into a global state with a world government and a world army dictating to the global population. And there was a letter, a controversial letter, because people dismiss it, but with the passage of events, it becomes more and more credible. And it was a letter written by a man called Albert Pike, who was a massive, massive Freemason in the United States in the 19th century. And it was to another Illuminati infamous character called Mazzini, Giuseppe Mazzini. And it detailed 3 world wars that would transform global society. And the first one described it in the terms that happened. The second one it described in terms that it happened. But, you can say, well, it came to light later, so, maybe they just put that in and faked the accuracy of the first 2 wars. So the credibility of what it said lies in what it said about the Third World War. And it talked about creating a conflict between the Muslim world and what it called political Zionism. And people will say, well, that's got to be a fake because there was no Zionism when that letter was supposed to be written. Well, this is an agenda that's projected a long way forward. This is why Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, and Eric Blair, George Orwell, 1984, who knew each other. Huxley taught the George Orwell French at Eton College, where the Royals go, and they knew each other and they became friends. And from the same sources, not least the Fabian Society of Britain, they understood the projected agenda. And we're talking there in 1932 that Huxley's book was published, 1948 that Orwell's book was published, and they are describing the society that's unfolding today at that time. And there are many, many other examples of people predicting the future who were insiders, who have turned out to be incredibly accurate. So the idea that Albert Pike would know that this Zionist movement was coming and the establishment of Israel was coming is very credible when you look at the background evidence. And of course, Zionism was established not that long after this letter was supposed to be written. And so he was talking about the Muslim world being brought into a war with the political Zionism, what today we call Israel, and that this would, in my terms, create a vortex that would draw in the world, in our terms, America, the European Union, NATO, into this war. And what you have now is a situation that this ISIS group has come out of nowhere, in effect, incredibly well armed and incredibly funded. I mean, I've seen figures like $2 billion at its disposal. And it's walking into towns in Iraq and taking them over. It's established itself at the key border crossings into Syria and into Jordan, and it's all happened really fast. And what the potential of this clearly is to do what Pike was talking about. Because I've said in my books for years that the plan was to create a massive divide and rule conflict between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims. I mean, I know it's hard to believe for anyone frickin' sane, but this argument over, this ancient argument over who should, be the natural successor the rightful successor to Muhammad and all that stuff, has created this enormous schism. And schisms are there to be manipulated and exploited by these people. So what you have, therefore, is this ISIS that suddenly appeared with its grotesque violence that is representing Sunni Muslims. And then you have the regime currently in Iraq that is representing, in effect, Shia Muslims. And you have, just across the border, the center of the Shia Muslim world, and that's Iran. Iran, 89% I think it is, of Iranian Muslims are Shia. Now, in the last little while, there has been this, apparently on the face of it, this strange change of direction by America in terms of Iran. They've spent all these years with Israel saying, you know, we must take out their nuclear facilities and these sanctions against them, oh, they're terrible. And now, if you remember, in the last week or so, they've even been talking about maybe they ought to get into discussions with Iran and come to some agreement on how they deal with this ISIS situation. And it's like, what? But when you come from this perspective, what they're doing is they're trying to draw Iran into this Sunni Shia conflict, like, you know, protect the Shia that this Sunni ISIS are threatening and overrunning at the moment. And once they get Iran pulled into that vortex, it ain't going to get out. Then there's another aspect of this, which is a real red flag for me. And that is, this ISIS organization is very extreme. And its very name, when you break down the wording, is describing its ambitions. And that's to take over Iraq, to take over Syria, and to take over what they call the Levant. And what does the Levant include? Israel. So here you have this extreme Muslim group, or actually the army, actually saying in its own name that our intention is to take over the Levant, to take over Israel. And you'd think at any other time, even with a lesser situation, Netanyahu would be surrounded by microphones and he'd be saying, we must be protected, Israel is in danger. Instead, he's come out and said, oh no, no problem, you leave them to it, America, no, don't intervene, leave them to it, then let them basically weaken each other. And then you've got the United States, their reaction. I mean, it sums up the ludicrous nature of it, that John Kerry has gone to Iraq and he said, well, we know about bloody airstrikes because, you know, we might kill civilians. Well, that's never stopped you in the past, mate, has it? Or any of your predecessors. And what it seems to me as I'm reading this is that they're all standing off to let this ISIS get a big foothold in that region. And then if it moves to the point where it starts to threaten Israel, then the button will be pressed. Then the Americans and NATO will come in because they're committed to protecting Israel's security. And then you'll start to see why that sliver of land called Israel, with less than 8 million people, has one of the best equipped armies in the world and a nuclear arsenal. Because what Pike was talking about was drawing all these different disparate groups